Hi, everyone. This is Marilyn Bradford, and I would like to welcome you to my Left Turn podcast. What is your left turn? Writing a blog, parenting in a different way, letting go of the old because you are aware of something greater. Left turns are choices we can all make. It's about a willingness to step into the unknown in any area of your life, to trust yourself, to risk creating or trying something new. It's about letting your true uniqueness shine. The greatest people who have lived, artists, statesmen, writers, explorers, musicians, have all been people willing to turn left. What capacities do you have that you have not acknowledged? What would your life and the world be like if you were willing to turn left? Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Left Turn podcast. I'm Marilyn Bradford, and I'm delighted today to have as my guest Emily Evans Russell. Emily is what I call a goddess of creation. She's amazing. In this reality, she's also a single mom of two. She's a facilitator of access consciousness. She works on a lot of the access gaggles. She talked about how she used to be a science geek, living in her head, figuring everything out. And then when she became an access consciousness, I'm not going to say follower, but whatever that is, joiner, what when she got introduced to the tools, she realized that she had this incredible capacity for knowing, for being with the energy of something. And that's when her left turns really began to show up. So welcome, Emily.
Thank you, Marilyn. Hey, if you introduce me as a goddess of creation, I will come on your podcast anytime. That's an awesome intro. I'm like, okay, all right.
Well, that's one thing that I've really appreciated about you. And you create and you go with it. And then if it needs to be changed, you change it. Or you destroy the whole thing and start again. And that to me is a true goddess of creation. It's not an answer. It's not, okay, I created this. This is the way I'm going for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Well, that's why I love the title for your podcast and how you just introduced that, because Marilyn and I were just chatting, before we got on. And it really is, though, that shift from, because I really wanted to find just the right course always, like what, that science analytical brain of there's got to be the right way. But I also was really open to experimenting always. So it was like when I found access bars or the tools of access, I was like, okay, I'm going to add these in and see where I go. But it was that major shift from doing everything logically, yes, to energetically. That was like left turn, left turn, left turn.
Well, that in and of itself is a huge left turn.
Yeah.
Because we're taught in this reality to do everything logically, to figure it out, to find an answer. And your willingness to go, you know what? There's something else here. I can know, And because, if you go ahead, please expand.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I had taught yoga before and was really into yoga and meditation. And I had always met people that said they had, they could see energy or they could feel energy. So I always thought they were the intuitive ones. Like those are the people that knew how to follow energy. And I didn't have either of those. And though we often hear about clairvoyance, people who can see things, or clairaudience, people who could hear things. And I was like, well, I don't have any of those talents. But the one you don't hear about is the one of just knowing, because there's not a sensory perception. It's just this instant knowing of like a download of what is true for you. And so for me, it was a really different, a left turn journey to start going, wait, you mean I could know how to create my life and make choices not based on my mind? Like I also have a capacity with this, because I had so thought that was something outside of me. And again, it's like you're either looking outside of you or you're looking to your logical mind, but neither of those are ever going to be true to who you actually are as a being.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's just such a huge, different way of being in the world and being you in the world. So, if you could choose a few of your left turns, I know you've had many that really created greater for you, what would they be?
I think a huge one was my divorce, just
Yes.
because I grew up in a very a Midwestern, family where my parents, I think practically every single person in my extended family is still married. Um, so the choice to pursue that, and I really did choose that based on looking at, okay, here I am. I had a whole bunch of logical reasons why I didn't want to make it harder for my kids, and I thought how I was raised, a divorce would make it harder. I would like fuck them up forever with with like getting a divorce. I wouldn't see them as much, like all of these things. And instead of going to my head, I was like, okay, what will my life be like in 5 years
Mhm,
if I choose to divorce?
mhm,
And then I looked at the energy of that, and what
mm,
will my life be like in 5 years if I don't? And it was probably the time where I had made other choices, trusting this newfound awareness of energy that
yes.
weren't like really important. And this one was, I knew it was going to be a massive shift in my life. And so I really had to trust the energy because it was obviously way lighter in my body, a sense of expansion, a sense of space with the divorce. And my
Mm,
head had a whole bunch of reasons why that made no sense. And so I kind of went all in with the universe and said, okay, I am going to jump for this one because I have seen in the other choices that if I choose based on this and not my head and not everybody else's points of view and not everyone else's judgments, and I just go with what I know, it's greater. So I'm going to do this. And I was like, please, please, universe, please assist because this, this one I'm really not sure about. And then when I chose that, it's been amazing. I mean, that was years ago. Um, I don't know, 8 years ago, 7 years ago. I can't keep track. Um, and to see how everybody, like the kids, my ex-husband, everything in our life got greater. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just like I chose that for me and therefore let's see where the chips might fall. It's like, well, no, when you do that, it really is like asking for it to get greater for everybody. And it
yes.
does. It just didn't look like how you think it's going to.
Well, you brought up something that I hadn't really ever talked about, which is it does seem that left turns always create, if they're done from knowing and awareness, they always create greater for whoever's doing the left turn and for the rest of the world if they're willing to have it. And that's always a question. Are they actually willing to have it?
Yeah.
And
And it's like a long game because what I've noticed is in the moment of the left turn,
yeah.
you have to keep driving through the curve for a while, like committed to the left turn. Because if you don't, if you doubt it, it's like you end up crashing because you listen to someone else's, like, oh, really? You're really going to go that way? And it's like you've got to commit to that left turn because it takes a little while sometimes to see, like, in hindsight, I think all of us can go, oh, when I chose this thing, I can now see how that was, a greater choice. But when you're in it, you don't have the gift of that yet. So you have to just really
True.
trust your
Yes.
knowing through that turn and keep going.
And keep
Um,
going.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah. And know that you're being true to you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting. I was in London recently and I had a guided tour of the National Gallery, and the guide was talking about Rembrandt went bankrupt because he was unwilling to stop creating in a new way. And I
Wow.
thought, and then he wasn't painting what people wanted him to paint in the way. And I thought, well, that's interesting. That's a left turn. He went bankrupt, but we don't really know what that was for him. They didn't, maybe he didn't care. Maybe somebody else supported him. But what really struck me was his willingness to be true to what he knew to be true.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool, you know.
It's really cool. And I love the National Gallery in London. I lived there for about 6 months when I was younger. And I had a friend who was an art major and
Mhm.
and brilliant artist. And same, she gave me a tour around that museum where I saw art and painting in a way that I had never before. And I think that's the other place where I really had more left turns, like is in finding interesting people, because the people that are making left turns are really wonderful to have in your life. They
Yes.
inspire you to keep going, but they're different they're different thinkers. Their perspective is different. And I think if anything, it's the people in your world that really contribute to how you see things. And you
Yes.
know, this is a biology geeky thing, but there are things in your brain, called mirror neurons, and they really do see your surroundings and the energy you're in. And we're all energy. So the people you surround yourself with and the energy they are, your brain goes, oh, I am that too. Okay. So like, why not use that to your advantage? Like surround yourself with people, artwork,
Emily,
you know?
but that's true. And you always have a sense of expansion.
Yeah.
I have loved doing this podcast because I learned all these things about these amazing people that I had no idea about. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say if you're coming to Access, you're making left turns to one degree or another. Some people more than others, and that's fine. Everybody has choice. But
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what's great about the tools of access consciousness or whatever it is people are doing, that's giving them expansion and a
yes,
different perspective. And there's something out there for everybody. And it also shifts and changes, throughout your life. Like I was really into yoga and meditation. And when I first came across access bars, I didn't meditate for anymore because I was like, well, that's giving me the space in my head. And then recently, I don't meditate anymore, but I really love listening to a good like meditation as I'm falling asleep.
uh-huh.
It's like you have things in our life that contribute in different ways. Um, and that was such a gift to find something as weird and different as access consciousness and just be going, hey, this, all I know is this is changing so many areas of my life. And that ability to start making left turns and just like see things show up after turning that I could not have ever imagined with my mind. It was like
Yes,
always greater than that. Always.
yes, yes, yes. Are there other left turns that come to mind when you look at your life or just consider?
I think a lot of the, because you mentioned London, it made me think of, I did that. It's a lot of the travel I've chosen in my
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
And like right after college, everybody else went to get a job. And I was like, well, I think it'd be fun just to live in London for a few months. So I did that. My other friends got office jobs. I did have a couple of friends from college come with, but they
Mhm.
got like office jobs. And I was like, I'm going to work in a restaurant and meet people from all different countries and stay out late and enjoy London. And so I did that.
How cool is
I
that?
worked
Yeah.
in Japan for a year teaching English. When I was a teacher in high school, I spent a summer in Kenya doing like traveling, but also volunteering in an orphanage and studying sea turtles. And like, I think so many of the left turns were things like that. And it started for me in college. I went to a school that was quite a conservative, it was a strange fit for me. A very small conservative liberal arts school, though. The education was phenomenal. And every January you had the choice. We didn't have classes. You had the choice to have like a winter term. So choose where you want to go travel. Some people got internships, they got jobs, and I always traveled. And my last year, I wasn't going to go because I really had a boyfriend that I liked a lot. And I was like, okay, this would be silly to not go study somewhere amazing. And so, despite of having a wonderful boyfriend, I chose to go for a semester. Or no, this wasn't I did a semester in Australia. Um, and
Wow.
before that, though, I studied sea turtles for a month in Baja, Mexico. And you couldn't, I think I got to shower once on the side of a road in a month. We camped every night
Yeah.
on the beach. And that trip gave me the travel bug, but so much bigger than a travel bug. Like after that, I was like, I am in. Like all I know is to see different parts of the world and meet people where they are at, like not touristy travel, but
Yes.
really experience a country. So that was a huge change because I think before that I was kind of like, well, I wasn't moving in that direction. And after that, I was like, okay, next semester, I'm going to go to Australia for the whole time. After that, I just kind of created my life involving it. And then when I had children, I sort of bought this reality's version of, well, you're not going to travel anymore. You have two
Yes.
young kids. And then one of the questions we talk about in access consciousness is, well, what else is possible? And here I had two young kids. I got really excited about these tools of access. And I was like, wait a second. Why have I bought this idea that I had to give up something that I really loved? And
Yes.
then I had no idea what was in store, but soon enough, I was working for the company of Access, and we have classes all around the world. And I was like, okay, I would like more travel in my life and have it work for me and my kids and my family. I don't want to have, I don't know how that will work. I don't have to figure it out. And it showed up. I had amazing like nannies and babysitters, and sometimes the kids travel with me. And it's like, but for a while I had decided I had to give it up. And then when I didn't, magic showed up.
Yes. You ask questions,
Yeah.
which is, and you've really, but I love to travel also. And
Yeah.
fortunately, that was one thing my family gave us early on because my father
Mm.
was a field geologist. So we lived in Europe sometimes.
Ah,
I spent my childhood summers a mile up a mountain in Montana and all of those kinds of things.
oh my gosh.
That was amazing. You bring up something that seems to be a part of people who choose left turns, which is a natural curiosity and a desire to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily book learning, but to become aware more. Oh my gosh, we could go over here. These people are really different. Look at their customs. And my sense is that it gives us all a way to have a more interesting point of view. Like there isn't one right way to do anything,
Yeah.
whether it's food or relationships or family or whatever it is. It's all, oh my goodness, look at all the possibilities.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I hadn't tapped into that as much. And
Yeah.
so how would you describe, so you're a single mom of two kids. How is the left turn being a mom?
um, it's so much easier than I thought it was. Now that would be at this age, I have a teenager now, and
Ah,
boy, is she giving me a run for my money. My ask right now is just like, I hope I'm getting this all on the early side, like the 13, 14, maybe 16, 17 is going to be really easy. But I'll tell you, one of the things I remember looking at before I did choose to get divorced and like be a mom on my own. Um, we have this tool of indulge a choice for a while and really see what it will be like before you make it. So I remember thinking, oh God, I don't know how I can handle everything. It's like, if I have two kids growing up and I still want to have a great life, like how I'm going to manage it. And this is before we got divorced. And my husband at the time went away for several days. So I was like, okay, well, this is a great time to really indulge like what this will be like. And in that time period, my washing machine broke. My daughter broke her ankle, and then some, even just those two, but I think there was a third as well.
uh-huh.
And it was funny because I handled it all with so much ease, kind of like when like you're the one, like I've got the football, I'm the one that needs to take it across the line. You just do.
Just do it.
You just do it. So that is how it's been. And I'm lucky to have two girls. So I don't know anything different, but we have a lot of fun girl time, you know? Like this weekend, I had planned to go to Houston to a wonderful class and travel and trip and see friends and relax. And my daughter needed me at home. And I, again, chose that left turn because I knew it was lighter, even though I was kind of like disappointed. And I trusted that energy. And that's what I see with them. Like my kids invite me to show up and be stronger and than I ever think then I it's different. Parenting is like they make you really like, especially they bring up challenges. And so it shows you parts of yourself that you have to dig into and really go, okay, what's going to work for all of us? This nobody else knows, like no one else is in our family. We're all different beings. What's going to work for us and work for me? So it's like in all of us. You're not a doormat, but it's really looking at that. And they've been such an invitation for that. And also like so much fun, even though there are days that really suck.
Right. Everyone has that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you bring up something that is such an acknowledgement of a left turn as a parent, which is that they are all different beings. I mean, I've been a psychotherapist forever, and I remember a client, and they truly desired to be good parents, and his son was obviously very different from him.
Yeah.
And I said something like, well, what if you acknowledged who he was and what worked for him? He says, well, isn't our job as a parent to mold them and tell them what's true? And like, okay, there's a challenge for me as a therapist.
Yeah.
Just your acknowledgement of them as different beings is amazing.
Is huge, because my daughters are so different. And I really was talking with a friend one time, similar to what you just brought up. And she goes, well, wouldn't it be boring though if like everybody in the family was the same? And I was like, yeah, that would be really boring.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, yeah. So look at your one daughter that's very different from you. But like, do you know people like that in the world that really create awesome stuff and have a life they love? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like, cool. You have more. I'm like, yeah, a family would be boring if everyone was the same. Just like the world would be super boring if everybody was the same. And
Yes.
somehow, like your client said, I mean, I think I had that in my world too. Must make sure they're like, you know, whatever I thought was the best version of
Yes.
what they could be, rather than going, man, you're awesome just as you are, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so exciting to see kids who grow up with that, because they have a trust in themselves
Yeah.
that a lot of people don't have if they grow up with, well, this is your religion and this is what you need to do and all of those kinds of things. So that's really amazing.
Yeah.
And you work for or work with an incredibly left turn consciousness company, Access Consciousness.
True story. I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you say a little bit about how it's different working with it?
Oh my gosh. Where do I begin? Except, in the worlds where I say I have to go to an event like for my kids' school, and people are like, what do you do? And I, I always have a hard time describing what I do. But then especially if anyone asks about, well, how did you get that job? The thing about working with Access Consciousness is it's the only place I've seen, but I'm sure there's other places out there like that. I don't know, but it's not like they hire positions in a business for, we require X, Y, and Z, and we will submit your resume and interview you and like fill this role. It was really very much based on energy. I see them go, okay, let's start here. And I started doing social media posts and having no real training in that. And then what I see as that company is they empower people's differences, and they go, well, what else do you know? What else do you want to create and work on? What else? And so everybody has created their own job through kind of being allowed to explore that, being allowed to turn left and really mess up too.
Yes. You have to mess up sometimes. You just
Yeah, you just do. And that's really, you don't have to go, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. It's like, whoops, okay, that one didn't go as planned. But to be able to work with that as an energy of everybody really allowed to explore who they are in the setting of a business and in the setting of creation. And sometimes it's not easy. And sometimes it's wonderful, which is most of the time, just if you're like, really look at it from, wow, how lucky am I to work with people from all around the world who see everything differently. And at the end of the day, it is like, Gary Douglas and Dane here are the co-owners of the company. And so they have an awareness in business that has been so cool to sometimes go, well, that's an interesting choice from my perspective, but it's like, it's your company. Let's see it. Okay, awesome. And then to see how that plays out and what new things get created, it's like, it really is this idea of putting left turns. I love the name of your podcast, Into Action, and seeing what they create in the world, because it is not done like any other traditional business or I've seen.
and it creates massively. I mean, it grows what, 16 to 20%
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah, it just makes no sense to, it's wonderful.
It's wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Emily. I've really enjoyed your left turn stories, or
Thank you, Marilyn.
them. It's just so wonderful to be with the energy, and I'm very grateful for you coming on the call. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to chat with you anytime. This has been really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining this episode of Left Turn. I wonder what embracing left turns could create in your life. What magical possibilities might show up. Remember, when you choose left turns, you are joining a group of the most creative and brilliant people the world has ever known.